Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Mickie Kennedy, who's the CEO of eReleases. Thanks for joining us, Mickie.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Mickie, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass, but try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only, okay?
Okay.
At what age do you want to retire?
65.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
40 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Pass.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Morning.
Favorite color?
Blue.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
5.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
Using AI.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey.
The biggest mistake of your career?
Not getting out of my way earlier.
How do you relax?
Writing poetry.
How many cups of coffee do you drink in a day?
0.
A habit of yours that you hate?
Eating fast food.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life?
Split testing processes.
Your favorite Netflix show?
Currently watching Wednesday. Really like it.
Okay, well, that was the end of the rapid fire round. Split testing processes seems to be one that stood out quite well. Could you talk more about that?
Right. So when I first did pay-per-click marketing, because I started my business about 25 years ago, or closer to 24, I'd say at this point. And I was mostly just on bulletin boards and talking, and that's how I got customers. And then I think Overture, which became GoTo.com, or vice versa, started pay-per-click marketing and started paying for traffic. And then I did that with Google when they launched, and it brought in sales, but I didn't know what I was doing. And so I would run ads and landing pages, and I get three orders in a row from a new ad, and I was like, "Oh, this is the winner." And then finally, I found some marketing groups, and they explained that you have to have enough results to be statistically relevant. And once I figured that out, I started split testing landing pages, and then I always said, like, I can apply this to other aspects of my business. So we split tested sending customers a letter with ideas for their next release compared to those that we didn't. We split tested whether to send a crazy shock and awe package to people or just sending them a book and a professional letter. And, over time, we've tried lots of different little things and tested them. And you can, it's not just advertising. You can do it with all the processes in your business or a lot of processes in your businesses. And so I found that very valuable.
And how do you go about selecting a particular audience for split testing? What is your average audience size that you select usually?
Well, when it comes to advertising, you kind of have to have the losing ad or the losing landing page has to have probably like 40 or 50 conversions for it to start, to have real strong statistical relevance. When it comes to like sending out, whether to send a letter to customers, that was a bit more. That was over a 6-month process, and we ended up, look at 300 customers got the the letter and 300 didn't. And then we would measure them over the next 2 to 3 years. Same thing with the shock and awe package compared to just sending them a book and a professional letter. That one was the biggest aha moment for us because I was sending out this box that had like Old Bay crab chips in it because we're from Baltimore, little Raven figurine, lots of fun little things and quirky stuff that I thought was amazing. It cost like $40, $50 to put this together. And I'd send it to all new customers. And one customer came to me and said that she felt it was unprofessional. And so rather than get angry or just say, I'm the boss, I could do what I want, I split tested it. And so for 6 months, we sent half the people, new customers, a book with a professional letter, and the other half we sent that shock and awe package. And then over the next 6 months, we saw that the people who received the professional letter and book were coming back and ordering and resulting in 30 to 40% more revenue. And then we measured that for the next 2 years, and it was like before it was over, they were spending 3 to 4 times what the population who received the shock and awe package. So the customer who told me it was unprofessional was exactly right with at least my customer base. They don't want to, have the press release distribution company that they use send out something that's wacky and, zany, even though that matches my personality. But they, a professional book and letter sends a much stronger signal, and it costs a lot less.
And speaking of press releases, then, according to you, what is the importance of a press release as a contributing factor to ranking higher on SERPs?
So when you send out a press release, you want it to be meaningful and newsworthy so that people will write articles about you. And as people write these original articles about you, that sends a strong signal to the search engines, when it comes to ranking, even when they don't link to you. Contextually, Google has a patent where they said we can determine in an article that a company that's mentioned is this particular website, and therefore we'll pass along that ranking, even though there's no domain name or URL in the actual article. And my clients see that all the time, as they, get articles written about them from these websites. Generally, they're within their industry, which makes it, very sends a signal to the search engines that this website is very strong and relevant within their industry, and it helps. And the things to avoid are getting distracted by the press release companies that just focus on syndication, where a copy of your press release is duplicated on a website. That happens with everybody when you send out a release, but it doesn't convey any SEO benefit to you to have the exact same press release on multiple websites. The real goal is to have a journalist look at that press release and turn it into an original article about you and your company.
And do you think press releases are the only way to spread the word about budding startups and small businesses?
I don't think it's the only way, but it is a very cost-effective way with the ability of leverage. For example, during the pandemic, we did a press release for the Dining Bond Initiative, which was set up to help restaurants that were closed down during the pandemic. You generate, one press release that would have cost $300 or $400 generated more than $10 million in revenue, over 150 articles, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, a lot of the food trade publications, dozens and dozens of newspapers across the U.S. And it even spawned international pickup as well. And they expanded their scope to include international countries as well. And so, that just shows that if you have something that's very newsworthy, you can generate a lot more from it than you ever could through an ad. Because if you set up an ad and spent $400, I don't think there's any way that you could have that kind of reach and that kind of revenue resulting from it. But potentially with PR and press releases, you potentially can do that if your message is really newsworthy and spot on.
And so press releases, in a sense, would be, do they add more credibility than if you were to compare them to, social media or influencer credibility? How do you compare these?
Right. So when people get media pickup, it's not unusual for people to say, hey, we got only 240 visitors from that article, which isn't amazing, but it converted at 30%, which is just off the charts because our best landing page is like 5%. And the reason that happens is because when people read an article, their defenses aren't up, like when they see an ad or a social media post from a particular company. And there's an implied endorsement that happens in an article, and it creates this goodwill that people want to do business with this company. And then they'll immediately go and find them or click through to a URL to them and purchase. They don't create a new tab and say, can I get this cheaper on Amazon or somewhere else? They're not really price shopping. They've already been sold just by having that article there. And that's the real magic of having these original articles written about you. It's also, I think, one of the reasons that so many people on social media are using influencers, because they're trying to leverage that credibility and implied endorsement. And, it works and doesn't work for some people to do the social media marketing and paying influencers. But the great thing about doing PR and press releases is the only cost is the sending of the release and getting it out there. There's no payment made to the New York Times for writing an article about you.
And so, to what extent do you think the gods of people are also now put up against news media in today's world?
Well, I think that media is changing. I think that where people get media has changed and will continue to evolve. When I was in this business 15 years ago, I had to really fight with the newswires to accept bloggers as journalists. There were bloggers who were more influential than trade publications. They had more traffic and they had more sway. But the newswires weren't seeing it at the time. And so, it's funny because now they're very accepting of people as journalists from all different walks of life. For example, they will give an Instagram influencer journalist access to the wire, because they have a following in fashion. And so where people are getting news is evolving and changing, and the news wires are changing and evolving as well. And, it's creating more potential opportunities for people to get their messaging out there.
And how exactly what part does your company play in this?
So what we do is we are a press release distribution platform. We send out all of our releases to the media through a newswire, and we use PR Newswire, which is the oldest and largest newswire of press releases. And they themselves charge like $1,200 to move a 500-word press release, and you get that through us for substantially cheaper. And the reason is because our customer base are entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses that just don't have the funds to send out $1,200 press releases. And the Wire, when they approached me, was looking for a way in which we could work together and they could support small businesses. So we do have rules on the types of companies that we can work with. If you're a large company or a publicly traded company, we're going to send you directly to the Wire to work with them. But we work with authors, speakers, all different types of small businesses, helping them get the same leverage and opportunity potential that would normally cost considerably more.
Have you had companies come up to you to wanting to do a press release because they want to get a Wikipedia article published, or because I think that's one of the criterions for Wikipedia articles, to have releases about your company that are not strictly promotional?
I see it occasionally. I see it more from small marketing and PR firm agencies that use us, who are doing a campaign in order to build articles and stuff so that they can then generate the Wikipedia listing. And so there are people who do it, and it does work because it gives this credibility for Wikipedia. So when they're measuring whether to include or exclude you, they're more apt to include you. It is a way to stand out. It is a way to get recognized, within your industry, with potential customers, and really be defined by someone by having them write an article about you. One of the things that I always recommend for clients is when you get media pickup, share it as much as you can, put it in front of your customers, also put it in front of your leads. A lot of people who are on the fence about working with you, they're always in the pipeline. And if they read an article about you and realize that this journalist has, written about you and put this implied endorsement out there, it makes them more likely to work with you. So it makes converting your existing customer base even better. I had one customer who is a offline carpet company in New Jersey, and they ended up generating a considerable amount of media pickup about more than 20 articles in floor trade publications, which is not their customer base, but it's their industry base. And they also got some local newspaper mentions and magazine mention as well. And they put that into what they called a brag book. And every time they went out and gave someone a quote for a carpet install, they would go through it with them a little bit and show them that they've been picked up in Floor Trade Weekly and this publication and that publication. And it increased their conversions more than 15% as a result of just having that brag book. So it makes it easier to convert, people that are in your pipeline or potential customers as well.
So how exactly did they go about getting those placements?
Oh, so they were interesting because they had approached me and they wanted to do a press release a month. And I told them that I didn't think that PR was going to work for them. They were a local carpet company, more of a commodity type business. They weren't doing anything that was unique. And so I just told them I didn't think this was going to work. But they said, we've got the budget, we want to do it. And after 4 or 5 months of sending out releases and nothing happening, we were having a brainstorm call just to figure out what could we do that would be meaningful. And one of the things they talked about, I was going through an exercise and I was like, who's your biggest enemy? And I expected it to be, this other carpet company in their community. And it was the big box home improvement stores, the Home Depot and Lowe's of the world. And they talked about how bad they are at, they do not vet the people who install carpets. They just ask, do they have a home improvement license? So if you're someone who's used to framing out a deck and a patio, and you get a call from Home Depot asking if you can install carpet, sometimes if your business is not doing well, you'll say yes and accept the job, even though you've never installed carpet before. And so we wrote an article about the challenges of competing against a Home Depot or Lowe's. And it was a David versus Goliath thing. And it talked about what they were doing to make meaningful, actionable changes and education in the quoting process. And it got picked up in over 10 floor trade publications. That press release was turned into more than 10 articles right out of the bat. And we continued to talk about that challenge over the next few months, and they continued to get media pickup. In total, over 20 media pickups from floor trade publications. And they also ended up getting local newspaper as well as New Jersey Magazine picking them up as well.
So are case studies like this available on your website for any listener who wants to check them out?
Yes, we have case studies on the website. Just I think it's either on their case study or reviews or something like that. Okay. It is one of those things where finding out what to send to the media is important. In the case of this carpet company, my reaction was I didn't think that they would be doing anything that was really meaningful or interesting. And I've since discovered that there are times where you can do an audit of your industry and try to determine what are the things that they're not talking about, their industry blind spots. And for the floor trade community, no one was talking about Home Depot and Lowe's, the big box home improvement stores, but it was something that resonated with the readership, which is all mostly local and regional carpet companies, independently owned companies. And so it really created a lot of buzz and interest. As a matter of fact, several of the publications said they got more letters to the editor and inquiries and kudos from that article than anything they had published in the past year. So, sometimes brainstorming and thinking outside the box can really get you there. Another thing that's come to the forefront is doing a survey or study within your industry. Putting together really good questions that are relevant right now. We're coming out of a pandemic. We've got supply chain challenges for people. There's hiring changes for people who worked at home during the pandemic, don't want to come back into the office. So, things like that could be put together in a survey, asking if they plan on spending more or less in the next quarter, 2 quarters marketing budget can give an indication on the economic horizon, whether there is going to be economic challenges down the road. And so if you put together questions that are really interesting today and live for a very small time, the media wants to know the answers. And so you can do this through SurveyMonkey. I like 4 questions per page, build out 4 pages. So you have 16 questions. Maybe on the last page, put a couple left field or crazy or wacky questions, because if they don't complete it, they've completed 75% of the survey and you still have those results. But I sometimes find that those can be very viral and work really well. Those weird questions. And an example of that is we did one for a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania. And the question towards the end was, what's the strangest thing a customer left in their car while being repaired? And it was just an open field, but they wrote something statistically relevant. It was not, but it was like 50 plus wacky anecdotes that we were able to share in a press release, and more than 10 auto industry publications picked it up, and I think over a dozen newspapers picked it up as well. So it did really well. And that's just a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania. Again, not very newsworthy in and of themselves, but by authoring the survey and sending it out, it did really well. A lot of people like them said, we don't know who to send it to. And I'm just like, there's lots of small and independent trade associations, and they belong to a couple. And I said, just ask them and tell them that you'll promote them in a press release that you'll be issuing over the wire. And the small and independent trade associations see this as a win-win. The large trade associations don't seem to care very much. So I would stick with the smaller and independent ones. They sent the link out to their members and got a few hundred responses and did extremely well with that. And it's something that anybody can replicate and do. And what I see most often when you do a really good survey in your industry is you usually get anywhere from 6 to 14 articles on average, which is just an amazing return to be able to get that many articles from one press release. It does take a little bit of work, but it's not extremely difficult, and it's something that anybody can do. You just have to make sure you're asking really good questions. I did have one customer who the question that they asked, they only asked a couple, was they were a dating website, and they were asking basically, do you prefer men who are 6 feet tall and 6 feet or taller, or less than 6 feet tall? And most people said 6 feet or taller. It wasn't an interesting outcome. Nobody was surprised by that. So that one sort of fell flat. But most of the times when you ask really compelling questions or interesting questions, brainstorm with colleagues, people that you work with, go back to when you go to conferences. What are the things that you talk about with other colleagues that don't make it to the trade publications? Like there's always things that people complain about. Like, have you noticed that people aren't paying on time lately? That we have all these challenges like that. That's something you can put in the survey and get some people's feedback on, and that makes it very actionable for the media to report on it.
And so what do you think, in your opinion, the future of blogging, where do you think that is headed? Because you were talking earlier about how influencers have been invited to become reporters or been given the credibility of reporters. So do you think more people are getting interested in blogging, and will take it up as a career?
I think that more people are building followings on platforms like TikTok and Instagram and places like that. And I see less people building out blogs. But that being said, I still think blogs can be very effective. And I've seen people who started blogs that after a while, they're indistinguishable from news websites, the way that they've categorized and put stuff together. I think that there's still always going to be room for blogs. I think that any place that people want to collect and go is going to do really well. I think that blogs also can work well because if they're done well, they get a lot of SEO love. And, rather than relying on a platform to feed the algorithm to get your content out there, you can sort of control it a little bit as far as how search engines spider you and what kind of relevance you have over time as you build a following and more people link to you.
And what do you think is an organic way of gaining media coverage at regular intervals? Is there some sort of a hack, or is there something people should be doing?
I think that one of the things that I recommend is to try to do a press release every quarter. There's also ways in which you can do it if you can't afford a press release distribution platform. Your pickup's going to be meaningfully low compared to that, but you don't necessarily even have to write an entire press release. You can just put together 2 or 3 sentences of what the hook is. And I always say, put a compelling quote in there, something that can't easily be paraphrased, because a great quote, a journalist can build a story around. And try to do that messaging 4 times a year. Send it to your local media. Pick up a newspaper who writes about your industry, call them and ask for their email address. They'll give it to you. People don't try to hide, they're in the business of communication. And so they are pretty accessible. The same thing with your trade publications. Reach out, pick a couple that you feel would be really a good fit and find out who writes there, who would be, someone that would be sympathetic to your industry, and get them on a list, and then just quarterly reach out to them. You're probably not going to have the results of 8 to 14 articles, but you can generate some pickup. And by just writing, a few sentences and a quote, the cost of doing that is very minimal, both from a time standpoint and a financial standpoint as well.
Okay, so the last question for you is of a personal kind. It is, what would you be doing in your life if not this right now?
Probably something with poetry. That's where I have a master's of fine arts in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry. And I suspected that I wouldn't be doing that for a career, but I do love it. It's my passion. And I've been writing off and on over the past 30 years since I got my degree. And I do think that I would probably do something along the lines of that, maybe even teaching as well. But I'm a very independent person, so I'm not sure how I would work being a teacher in a university with all the politics and things like that. But I do feel like I'd probably be doing something a little more writing and creative writing focused.
Well, speaking of which, your room looks quite interesting. Is that a dinosaur painting from where?
Yeah, it's a velociraptor on the wall, and I have a cave bear skull in the back as well.
Wow, like a real cave bear skull.
Yeah, a prehistoric cave bear skull. They're extinct, but they were quite large.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. That was Mickie Kennedy, who's the CEO of eReleases. Thanks for joining us, Mickie.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Check out their website for more details, especially for those case studies. And we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.